Commissioner Berman.
Present.
Commissioner Devine.
Present.
Commissioner Godwin.
Present. Commissioner
Wright.
Present.
And I'll go ahead and lead us to the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is administrative business, and before we get into administrative business, I'm going to ask staff to read the advisement statement for public comments.
Thank you, Chair. Public meetings are a limited public forum, meaning that there are rules for commenting at these meetings. Comments on non-agendized items must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city, and comments on agendized items must relate to that specific item. If comments do not fall into one of these categories, the city will provide you with an initial warning to stay within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city or on topic. If the warning is not followed, the chair will direct the city clerk to cut off the microphone. And throughout the warning system, I will seek assistance of the city attorney in identifying comments not related to the agenda item or not within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll ask if there's any public comments on the administrative business tonight.
There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay, I'll give a couple more seconds, and you could view the screen for the means to call in if you have a comment. If you're dialing in, dial 1-669-900-6833. And you would press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute once you're called upon. Any hands raised?
There are no raised hands at this time.
All right, and seeing no comments in person, I will go ahead and close public comment on the administrative business and move on to approval of the order of agenda. Are there any motions for order of agenda approval? Commissioner Godwin,
I move we do the order of the agenda as written.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Devine. Please vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next up, approval of minutes from October 2nd, 2023 and November 6, 2023. Are there any questions, comments, or perhaps a motion for either or both together?
I have a motion to approve both together.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Godwin?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And we do not have a designation of liaison. And on to oral communications. Are there any oral communications? Looks like we have one. And so first we'll take the oral communications in person, but if you're calling in, staff will show the call-in number, thank you, on the screen. All right, Chris Redfield.
Good evening, staff and commissioners. I want to speak on the quarry reclamation coming up. Recently, there's been some correspondence back to the city, and I said, I'm sure you're aware, recent revisions have been proposed to the applicant's original reclamation plan. The revision reduces the initial fill amount by approximately 10%. As stated in the correspondence to the city, the reduced fill is in line with the commission's suggestion, but does not alter the existing EIR or CEQA guidelines. I thank you all for taking the assault at the June 5th siege. I also thank you for doing your absolute best to cover the research ground, pun intended, in the quarry. This project does not include any development or proposal for development. As proposed, and unless proven otherwise, all aspects are thoroughly covered. Unlike the quarry's existing condition, reclamation can and will only enhance its appreciation by all Pacificans. I anticipate this to come before you again in mid-24. I look forward to another lively meeting and more intelligent questions and deliberation by the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next is Cliff Lawrence.
Good evening. My name is Cliff Lawrence, and first want to thank the commissioners again for your service. I really, even just reading what I read, find it daunting, and I do have an appreciation for what you do, and I am grateful. I'm here tonight because I have a concern to bring to the attention of everyone who is interested in this. There's going to be a meeting tomorrow night, the subject of which was suddenly changed to the surprise of many of us, at least the document that we are going to be discussing. We've not had an opportunity to hear the city's presentation yet, or had any opportunity for a Q&A and get answers to our questions, and there are quite a number of questions. What I'm here to ask for is that the sequence for tomorrow night insert a period of Q&A for the larger audience after the city's presentation and before the group is divided up into table discussions. There are many people who have some very good questions to ask, better than I, and I thank you for your time, and I really pray that this will happen tomorrow night, that we'll have a good Q&A session. I thank you all.
Thank you, Cliff. Are there any other public comments for the oral communication section in person? Don't see any cards or hands. How about online?
There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay. Closing public comment, bringing it back to the commission. I'll go ahead and let Commissioner Wright speak.
Just as a follow-up on that, since in case anybody who's watching on TV is interested in the meeting about tomorrow night that was mentioned, it would be helpful, I think, to me and perhaps the listening public for Christian to point out the topic of the meeting, the location, and the time, if that's okay.
Agreed. And then also the commenter had a request about inserting a Q&A segment after staff's presentation and before the breakout groups, which I think is a really great idea that could help the breakout groups be more efficient. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Wright. Good evening, Planning Director Christian Murdoch. So to Commissioner Wright's point, the meeting tomorrow night's on the city's local coastal land use plan update, or LCLUP. It's the second meeting of 3 that the City Council called for in endorsing the community engagement plan about trying to take the final steps towards certification of that document by the California Coastal Commission. And so meeting number 2 is focused on some significant new alternative modifications that the city could propose in order to try to resolve some of the key points of conflict with the Coastal Commission. So those will be discussed and they're outlined in brief in the staff report that's available. The meeting will be at the Community Center, 540 Crespi. The doors open at 5:30 for a dinner service, and the formal meeting presentation and City Council special meeting will start at 6 p.m. There will be a public comment opportunity at the end of the meeting where any member of the public can identify other LCLUP policy issues of interest to them, so the city staff can gather that input and try its best to answer all of those questions ahead of meeting number 3, planned for early February. And so members of the public can provide the input then. They can provide that input to the tabletop facilitators during the conversation, or they can submit written questions in advance or following the meeting with any additional questions they may have about the new policy language or other matters in the LCLUP.
Can I insert a follow-up? Will it also be available similar to tonight's meeting, either by Zoom or webinar? Or
So a live remote participation option will not be available tomorrow night, given the location of the meeting and some technical limitations. The meeting is being recorded by PCT, and so it will be available online for any member of the public to stream. That will afford them the initial staff presentation opportunity as well as the debrief and public comment session. Due to the multiple roundtable discussions, that phase of the meeting, which will be an hour to an hour and a half in the middle of the meeting, unfortunately cannot be recorded, and so it'll sort of be a intermission phase of that recording, I suspect. Hopefully that'll be edited out in the uploaded version.
Another follow-up question. So for people attending in person, if they have questions after the presentation, is there opportunity to ask that after the breakout group discussion? Or did you mention that there's going to be a facilitator at each table? Can they ask their questions of that person?
So they're welcome to ask whatever questions they have. That feedback and those questions will be recorded. Not all the facilitators will be familiar enough with the information to answer in-depth technical questions. The facilitators are really there to help guide through the prepared prompts and also to make sure all viewpoints are respected and provided at the table. So the key technical questions really need to be provided to staff. And so again, those can be raised during the public comment opportunity, at the tables, or in written correspondence before or after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right. Looks like there's no other discussion on oral communications. So moving on to consent items, which there are none. So next up, new public hearings. And we have one item tonight, and it is CAP 818, file number 2023-023, amendment to cannabis activity permit, CAP 8-18, to amend conditions of approval included in resolution number 2019-031 and 2021-001 of the Planning Commission of the City of Pacifica, which approved a cannabis retail operation for retail sale of adult use and medicinal cannabis located at 450 Dundee Way, assessor parcel number 022-021-640 in Pacifica. The amendments to be considered would include modified requirements related to storefront window size, which is condition of approval number 9, and payment of outstanding and applicable fees and costs associated with the processing of the application, which is condition of approval number 18. Recommended CEQA action is Class 1 categorical exemption, CEQA guidelines section 15301, and recommended action is approve with conditions. Can we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Caitlin Snodgrass, Assistant Planner with the Planning Department. Tonight, I'm presenting you proposed amendments for 2 conditions of approval of Cannabis Activity Permit CAP-8-18 associated with Planning Commission Resolution 2019-031. Resolution 2019-031 conditionally approved a cannabis retail operation, or CRO, with adult use and medicinal cannabis sales at 450 Dundee Way, Suite 2 in September of 2019. In August of 2022, the Planning Commission conducted an annual review of the CRO and found it to be non-compliant with 5 of the conditions of approval, which led to the Planning Commission's revocation of CAP-8-18. Councilmember O'Neill called up the revocation for City Council review, and Anna Leanna Williams of Seaweed Holistic submitted an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision. In November of 2022, City Council approved Resolution number 79-2022, denying the appeal of and upholding the Planning Commission's revocation of CAP-8-18, scheduled to take effect January 15th, 2024, unless the revocation conditions are satisfied prior to the revocation date. The applicant has satisfied revocation conditions 1 and 2 and has made all of the required monthly payments through November 2023 as directed by revocation condition number 3. The City Council adopted ordinance number 893-CS to amend the provisions related to storefront cannabis operations, which satisfied revocation condition number 4. Revocation condition number 5 conditions modifications to approval number 9 and 18 of Planning Commission Resolution 2019-031. Yeah. The project description of the CRO would remain the same as originally detailed in the September 16, 2019 staff report and as conditionally approved by the Planning Commission Resolution number 2019-031, with the exception of conditions of approvals number 9 and 18. The amendment to condition of approval number 9, if approved, would allow for the existing storefront in its current configuration to remain in place and be consistent with the municipal code as enacted by ordinance number 893-CS. The current window configuration comprises 30% of the entire storefront and 50% of the horizontal length of the store. The amendment to condition of approval number 18, if approved, would require the applicant to pay all outstanding fees, costs and fees associated with the processing of Amendment CAP 818 and applicable fees and costs associated with the preparation and execution of the original deferral agreement and the amendment to the deferral agreement, which is necessary to incorporate the revisions to the payment obligations as a result of City Council Resolution number 79-2022 and the subsequent amendment to condition of approval number 18. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission finds the proposed amendments to Cannabis Activity Permit CAP-8-18 are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, approves an amendment to the Cannabis Activity Permit CAP-8-18 to modify conditions of approval number 9 and number 18 related to storefront window size and payment of outstanding and applicable fees and costs associated with the processing of the application by adopting the attached resolution included as attachment A to the staff report and incorporates all maps and testimony into the record by reference.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission if there's any questions. If no questions, then I'll have the business owner come speak.
Just one quick question. I assume that staff has reached out to the applicant and that there's been some kind of dialogue about that fee schedule and that that's something that's attainable and it's not an unrealistic burden.
Well, I can't say that staff has specifically sought the applicant's input on the reasonableness. What I can say is that's the city council directed schedule of payments, and they have thus far made all of the required payments by the ultimate deadline. And so I take that to mean it's feasible and they intend to make the payments. I think there are 2 payments remaining, and so I think it's a good indication in regards to the fee issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if the business owner would like to come and speak, you're welcome to. Otherwise, you could wait. Yeah.
Good evening, city staff and commissioners. Thank you. I really didn't come prepared to speak tonight, but I do want to thank everyone who's had any input or worked on this project. I know this is a long-standing issue that we've been dealing with, and I just want to say thank you for all your work, and that I am happy to be where we are now and hope that the commission approves whatever the city staff came up with and had was approved by city council and we're happy with. And again, have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I'll open up public comment. If you'd like to give a comment on this agenda item, you could fill out the yellow cards in the back. If you're calling in at home, staff will present the call-in information on the screen. Thanks, Christian. Seeing no in-person comments, is there anyone on the line?
There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay, just a reminder, if you're dialing in, dial 1-669-900-6833 and press star 9 to raise your hand.
There are no raised hands at this time.
All right, thank you. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for deliberation or a motion.
It appears to me that both staff and the applicant are in agreement, and I personally don't have any further questions. I'm glad that this has finally been resolved, and it appears that it's in the city's interest, in the applicant's interest, and certainly with the burden on staff, it's in their interest to put this behind us. So at this time, I would like to propose a motion that we approve the motion proposed by staff as written.
All right, so Commissioner Wright, motion to approve based on the motion in front of us today. Sorry, it's a little roundabout way to say it. Oh, thank you. Before I ask for a second, I am also very happy to see resolution on this and a path forward where the business owner gets to operate their business, which if anyone's been in the shop, it's a really, really nice shop. There's music. It's a nice shop to have in our city. So I too am really happy to see basically a path forward, which is great. Mm-hmm.
One more thing. I mean, I go to Rock and Rob's relatively frequently, and I do see the owners of the business out front cleaning up all the time. And that is so appreciated that people take the time to do that. So it really feels like the store is also a part of the community, not just looking to sell things, but is actually a benefit to the community at large as well.
I, too, am also a resident of Rockaway, and I'm often walking right past the shop on my way to the quarry, and the business owners are always out front, and there's always music playing, and it's always a really pleasant and engaging atmosphere. So I'm also happy to see a path forward for both of you.
All right, so we have a motion on the table, and the motion's also presented in front of us, which is consistent with staff's recommendation. Is there a second? Commissioner Godwin?
I will second it.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. And so that is the end of our public hearings. So on to communications. Commission communications. Are there any commission communications? Commissioner Wright.
I served as liaison to City Council, and I think it was not lost on City Council, the amount of the heavy lift of our discussion on top of everything else that they're trying to do with the housing element. They too had a number of questions, and I think as the meeting progressed, gained a little bit more understanding of how complex it was and how much of a lift it was. I cannot say enough about how staff has been performing and how appreciative I am to them for what they have done on top of all the other things that we're trying to get accomplished here. I thought it went very well. After much discussion, things are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright. I absolutely agree. And staff has worked so hard the past 2 years or more on just so many city-changing documents that are really impressive. So great job. Any other commission communications? All right, staff communications.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening again, Commissioners. Planning Director Christian Murdoch. I'll provide a brief version of what I shared earlier about tomorrow night's community meeting. 5:30 p.m. at the Community Center, 540 Crespi Drive, doors open for dinner, for a community meeting regarding the city's local coastal land use plan update, or LCLUP update. We're going to talk about some New policy provisions the city council may consider related to development in a couple neighborhoods in town that might benefit the community in terms of allowing development in a way that would be different from the Coastal Commission's previous comments. So we welcome everyone to come. The formal meeting part of the program will start at 6 p.m., community roundtable discussion, and report out and public comment opportunity at the end. Also, with the conclusion of tonight's public hearing item, there's currently no business scheduled for the December 18th Planning Commission meeting, so more than likely that meeting will be canceled. We're keeping it on the calendar for now, just in case anything unforeseen comes up. We will publish a meeting cancellation a few days in advance if we're not going to have the meeting, but heads up to you and your families and the public that currently there's no business scheduled for December 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, on that topic, Director Murdoch, does January 1st fall on a Monday? Looks like it. So I'm assuming that there will not be a regular Planning Commission meeting on that day.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And looks like we're coming to an end. Before we end, I'm going to go ahead and read this statement. Anyone aggrieved by the action of the Planning Commission has 10 calendar days to appeal the decision in writing to the City Council. If any of the above actions are challenged in court, issues which may be raised are limited to those raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Judicial review of any city administrative decision may be had only if a petition is filed with the court not later than the 90th day following the date upon which the decision becomes final. Judicial review of environmental determinations may be subject to a shorter time period for litigation, in certain cases 30 days following the date of final decision. And with that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
I propose a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.